The room fell silent the moment the exhausted single father lowered himself into the chairman's seat. Moments earlier, 6 polished executives had dismissed him with impatient glances, whispered assumptions, and cold indifference as he sat alone in the lobby for 45 long minutes with his little daughter asleep against his shoulder. They had seen worn shoes, tired eyes, and a man carrying a child's backpack. What they had failed to see was the person behind the struggle, the sacrifice behind the silence, and the truth that would soon leave every one of them pale with regret. Before we begin, if you believe kindness still matters and that everyone deserves a second chance, please take a moment to like this video, comment below, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to the channel Heart Kindness Tales for more emotional stories that remind us all to never judge a person by appearances. Morning sunlight poured through the towering glass walls of the prestigious Sterling Heights Corporate Center, painting golden reflections across the marble floors. Employees hurried through revolving doors carrying expensive briefcases, discussing quarterly reports and investment opportunities while security guards greeted familiar faces with professional smiles. Among the crowd stood a man who seemed completely out of place. His name was Corbin Hale, 38 years old, a single father whose life had become an endless cycle of responsibility, sacrifice, and quiet endurance. In one arm he carried a worn leather folder filled with documents, while his other arm supported his 6-year-old daughter, Marin, who had fallen asleep with her head resting softly against his shoulder. Corbin's clothes were clean but simple. His jacket had been carefully pressed at home, yet years of use had faded its original color. Dark circles framed his eyes, evidence of sleepless nights spent balancing work obligations with parenting duties. Life had not been gentle with him. 3 years earlier, Corbin had lost his wife, Celine, after a sudden illness that changed everything in a matter of months. Overnight he had become both father and mother to a grieving child who needed stability while his own world crumbled beneath him. He learned how to braid hair from online videos. He learned how to comfort nightmares at 2 in the morning. He learned how to attend parent-teacher meetings after exhausting business trips. He learned how to smile for his daughter even when he sat alone at night staring at unpaid bills and wondering how much longer he could keep carrying the weight by himself. Yet despite every hardship, Corbin never allowed bitterness to settle inside his heart. He taught Marin to say thank you. He volunteered at community centers when he had time. He remembered birthdays, helped neighbors, and believed deeply that kindness was the one thing life could never take away. That particular morning, he arrived at Sterling Heights for an important board meeting that had been postponed twice because of unexpected circumstances. His babysitter had cancelled at the last minute, leaving him with no choice but to bring Marin along. She had promised she would sit quietly. Instead, the early drive and warm sunlight streaming through the car window lulled her to sleep before they even reached downtown. Corbin approached the reception desk politely and introduced himself. The receptionist checked her screen, frowned slightly, and informed him that several executives were already gathering upstairs but someone would escort him shortly. Minutes passed. 10 minutes. 20 minutes. 30 minutes. No one came. Around him, 6 senior executives occupied a nearby seating area in the lobby. They spoke confidently about market trends, expansion plans, and strategic partnerships. Every so often their eyes drifted toward Corbin. Toward the sleeping child. Toward the backpack decorated with tiny stars. Toward the man who appeared more like a struggling parent seeking assistance than someone expected at an executive meeting. One executive adjusted his cufflinks and quietly shook his head. Another glanced at his watch and smirked. A woman in a tailored navy suit whispered something that caused the others to exchange amused expressions. To them, Corbin represented inconvenience. Unprofessionalism. Weakness. They had built careers projecting perfection. No children at meetings. No visible exhaustion. No signs of personal struggle. They believed leadership looked polished and flawless. Corbin noticed the looks. He noticed the subtle dismissals. The avoidance. The assumptions. But he had grown accustomed to being underestimated. Single fathers often lived in an invisible space. People admired mothers who sacrificed everything. People sympathized with widowers briefly. But eventually society expected men to remain composed, productive, and emotionally distant. Very few understood the loneliness that followed. Very few understood the guilt of missing school events because deadlines could not wait. Very few understood sitting in parking lots wiping away tears before entering the house because children deserved parents who appeared strong. Corbin simply adjusted Marin's blanket and continued waiting. At minute 45, the elevator doors opened. An assistant rushed into the lobby looking visibly alarmed. She scanned the room until her eyes landed on Corbin. Relief flooded her expression. She apologized repeatedly, explaining there had been confusion with scheduling changes. Immediately, the executives straightened in their seats. Confusion crossed their faces. The assistant addressed Corbin with extraordinary respect. She informed him that the board members were waiting and that everyone was anxious for the meeting to begin. The 6 executives exchanged uncertain glances. They followed behind as Corbin rose carefully, lifting his daughter without waking her. Together they entered a private elevator leading to the top floor. The atmosphere shifted dramatically. The same people who had ignored him now attempted small talk. They introduced themselves. Offered assistance. Smiled awkwardly. Corbin remained courteous. But he said little. When the elevator doors opened, they stepped into an elegant boardroom overlooking the city skyline. Large windows captured the brilliance of the daytime sun. Fresh flowers decorated the table. Dozens of influential figures stood waiting. And then something happened that stopped everyone cold. Corbin walked directly to the head of the table. The chairman's seat. He gently laid Marin's backpack beside him. Adjusted his jacket. And sat down. The color drained from the executives' faces. Shock settled across the room like a heavy cloud. Because the man they had ignored for nearly an hour was not an applicant. Not a consultant. Not a visitor. He was Corbin Hale. Majority shareholder. Interim chairman. Founder of Hale Legacy Ventures. The person whose leadership had quietly saved the company from financial collapse 2 years earlier. Corbin had inherited a modest family investment firm from his late father decades ago. While others chased headlines and recognition, he focused on sustainable growth, ethical decisions, and long-term stability. He preferred anonymity. He avoided media appearances. He rarely attended social events. His priorities had changed after losing his wife. Success no longer meant luxury. Success meant being home in time to read bedtime stories. Success meant hearing his daughter laugh. Success meant building a future she would never have to fear. The executives sat frozen. Their minds replayed every dismissive glance. Every whispered judgment. Every assumption. Corbin looked around the table calmly. His voice remained steady. He spoke about leadership. About culture. About values. He discussed performance metrics and future objectives. But then he shifted toward something more personal. He explained that companies often spent millions promoting values such as inclusion, compassion, and respect. Yet true character revealed itself in unguarded moments. In elevators. In waiting rooms. In lobbies. In interactions with people who appeared powerless. He described sitting downstairs for 45 minutes watching people evaluate him based solely on outward appearances. He spoke about being a single parent. About canceled babysitters. About sleepless nights. About carrying responsibilities invisible to most observers. He reminded everyone that titles disappeared outside office walls. Parents still worried. People still grieved. Individuals still carried private battles that colleagues never noticed. The room remained painfully silent. One executive lowered his gaze. Another appeared close to tears. Because beneath their professional identities, many recognized themselves in his words. A father who missed soccer games. A daughter caring for aging parents. A manager recovering from divorce. People hiding struggles behind polished smiles. Corbin was not angry. That made the moment even more powerful. He wasn't interested in humiliation. He believed humiliation rarely changed hearts. Understanding did. Empathy did. Compassion did. At the end of the meeting, he announced a new initiative within the company. Flexible schedules for parents. Expanded family support services. Mental wellness resources. Emergency childcare assistance. Policies recognizing employees as human beings first and professionals second. For the first time in years, some staff members felt seen. Valued. Understood. Months passed. The transformation inside Sterling Heights became remarkable. Productivity increased. Employee retention improved. People smiled more often. Managers listened more carefully. Parents stopped apologizing for attending school events. Workers felt comfortable asking for help. A culture built upon image slowly evolved into one built upon humanity. As for the 6 executives, each carried the memory of that morning. Not as punishment, but as a lesson. One executive later volunteered at a community center serving single parents. Another established scholarship programs for children who had lost family members. Others began mentoring employees struggling with personal challenges. The experience had changed them. Because sometimes the greatest leaders do not teach through authority. They teach through vulnerability. One afternoon nearly a year later, Corbin returned home after another long day. Marin greeted him at the door carrying a handmade drawing. It showed a little girl holding hands with her father beneath a bright yellow sun. Above them she had written simple words in colorful letters. "My daddy helps people feel better." Corbin knelt down and hugged her tightly. For a moment, tears filled his eyes. Not because life had become easy. It hadn't. There were still difficult mornings. Unexpected challenges. Moments of loneliness. But he realized something profound. His greatest achievement would never appear in annual reports. It would never be measured in profits. It would never be displayed inside boardrooms. His greatest achievement was raising a child who understood kindness. A child learning that every person deserved dignity. A child who would grow up knowing that compassion was not weakness. It was strength. And perhaps that was the true reason destiny had allowed those executives to overlook him that day. Because sometimes people need to witness their own assumptions reflected back at them before they can truly change. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to Heart Kindness Tales, and share it with someone who believes the world still needs more empathy and understanding. Special request, comment, kindness sees beyond appearances. If you believe every person deserves respect regardless of how they look or what struggles they carry. As Corbin tucked Marin into bed that evening, sunlight faded beyond the horizon, giving way to the gentle colors of dusk. He kissed her forehead, turned off the light, and stood quietly at the doorway for a moment. Life had taken much from him. It had stolen dreams. It had brought unbearable loss. It had forced him to walk through seasons of pain few could understand. But it had also given him purpose. It had taught him patience. It had shown him that true wealth is not measured by titles, possessions, or status. True wealth lives inside moments of kindness. Inside sacrifices no one applauds. Inside hearts willing to remain gentle even after being broken. And somewhere in a corporate lobby, beneath bright morning sunlight and polished marble floors, 6 people would forever remember the day they learned that the most important person in the room is often the one everyone else chooses to overlook.